It's no mystery to me why the guy who usually wins the MVP in the All-Star game is a guard.
Who were my toughest rivals? That's a question I've heard for decades, and people usually expect a simple answer. A big name, a famous matchup, a rivalry they've already seen replayed 1,000 times. I get why they think that way. I played against a lot of great players. But that's never been my definition of tough. Tough isn't about who scores more or who wins the night. It's about who takes away what you're most comfortable doing, who forces you out of your rhythm, who makes the game feel unfamiliar. At 78, when I look back now, I don't think about headlines or stat lines. I think about pressure. I think about the moments when the game slowed down, when instinct wasn't enough, when every possession demanded control and discipline. Those moments stay with you because they expose your game. And when I'm honest with myself, there are 5 players who did that to me more than anyone else. 5 rivals who challenged my comfort, my patience, and my sense of dominance. Those are the names that never left me. Number 5, Willis Reed and I were never close off the court, but we understood each other immediately on it. We were both centers who carried more than our own responsibilities. When you play that position the way we did, you don't just guard space, you carry expectations. Every time we faced each other, especially in the early 70s, it wasn't just about skill. It was about leadership tone and who could impose calm on chaos. On the floor, our relationship was direct and uncompromising. No talking, no theatrics, just 2 men who knew the game would bend around whoever held his ground longer. The series everyone remembers is the 1970 finals, and I remember it for different reasons than most people. Game 7 at Madison Square Garden is talked about like a myth, but when you're in it, it's much more uncomfortable than heroic. Reed was hurt. Everyone knew that. When he came out for warm-ups, the building shifted. You could feel it. Not excitement pressure. He didn't score much that night, but that's never what made it difficult. What made it difficult was that every possession suddenly felt important. There was no room to ease into the game. I finished that game with 36 points and 19 rebounds, numbers that look dominant on paper. But they don't tell you how narrow the margins felt. Every shot had to be clean. Every movement had to be deliberate. There was no such thing as a casual possession. Reed's strength wasn't about overpowering me. It was about positioning and timing. He understood where to be before the play fully developed. He crowded angles just enough to force adjustments without fouling. He made you think twice about shots you usually take without thinking once. That's dangerous against a player whose game is built on rhythm. When I caught the ball, I could feel him anchoring the floor, not jumping early, not biting on fakes, just staying present, making the court feel smaller than it actually was. There were moments in that series when I had to ask myself questions mid-possession. Do I go to the hook now, or do I wait? Do I establish deeper position, or do I move the ball and trust the next action? Those are questions you don't want to be asking in a finals game. Reed forced them on you. He didn't take the game away outright. He slowed it down and made you carry it possession by possession. That kind of pressure doesn't show up in box scores, but it lives in your head. What made Reed especially tough was that he never seemed affected by the moment. The crowd didn't speed him up. The stakes didn't change his approach. He played the same way, whether his body was right or not. That steadiness tests you because it removes excuses. You can't wait for mistakes. You have to create something clean every time. Against him, I couldn't rely on dominance alone. I had to be precise. The truth is, Willis Reed didn't beat me by taking away my ability. He challenged my comfort. He reminded me that even when you're at your best, control can never be assumed. And that's why he stays on this list. Number 4, Nate Thurmond was different from Willis Reed, but the pressure he created stayed with me just as long. Off the court, there was respect. No friendship, no rivalry talk, just a clear understanding that when we shared the floor, nothing was going to come easy. On the court, Nate was one of the few men who met me at the point of contact and didn't move. That matters more than people realize. When your game is built on balance and angles, the moment someone takes those away, everything slows down. The matchup that defines it for me came in the early 70s when Golden State and Milwaukee kept running into each other in games that turned physical without ever looking reckless. Nate wasn't flashy. He didn't sell fouls. He didn't chase blocks out of position. You stayed connected. I remember one game in particular where I finished with just over 20 points on a lot more shots than I wanted to take. On paper, it looks fine. In real time, it felt like work. Every catch was contested. Every turn into the lane was crowded. There was no free space to settle into rhythm. What made Thurman tough wasn't that he stopped the skyhook outright. Very few people ever did. What he did was force me to start it farther out than I preferred. An extra step matters. It changes timing. It changes balance. Nate had the strength to hold position and the discipline to wait. He didn't jump early. He didn't reach. He trusted his length and made me prove everything. That kind of defense doesn't show up in highlights, but it accumulates over 48 minutes. There were possessions where I had to reset twice. Catch, feel him there, pivot, pull the ball back out, repost. That costs energy. It costs patience. And when you're doing that night after night against the same person, you start thinking ahead instead of reacting. That's when a defender wins a mental edge. I remember asking myself during those games why shots I'd made my entire career suddenly required so much attention. That's not doubt, that's awareness. Nate forced it. Thurman's greatest strength was consistency. He didn't give you different looks. He gave you the same one over and over until you cracked or adjusted. For a player like me, adjustment meant perfection. The hook had to be higher. Footwork had to be exact. Any laziness showed immediately. There was no coasting through a quarter against him. Even when I scored, I felt him there leaning, contesting, making sure I never forgot he was part of the equation. The numbers from those matchups don't tell the story. What tells it is how tired the game felt mentally. Nate didn't beat me with offense. He didn't take over games with the ball. He made me earn space, earn rhythm, earn confidence, one possession at a time. And the truth is simple. Nate Thurman was one of the few defenders who made my most trusted move feel conditional instead of automatic. That's why he belongs on this list. Number 3, Moses Malone challenged me in a way that felt unfamiliar, and that's why he belongs here. Off the court, there was distance. Different generations, different paths, different personalities. But on the floor, that didn't matter. What mattered was that Moses played the game at a pace and with a force that disrupted control. My game was built on timing, balance, and choosing the moment. Moses played as if the moment never stopped. When we matched up in the early 80s, especially in playoff settings, it was clear immediately that this wasn't about stopping a move. It was about surviving pressure. The series that stays with me most came when he was in his prime, attacking every possession like it might be his last. I remember games where I would get a clean look, feel good about the shot miss, and before I could even turn my head, Moses was already there again. Offensive rebound, reset, another possession gone. You can prepare for defense. You can study angles. It's much harder to prepare for a player who refuses to let a possession end. There were nights when he pulled down double-digit offensive rebounds and each one felt like a statement. Not loud, not emotional, just relentless. What made Moses difficult wasn't that he guarded me better than anyone else. It was that he changed the flow of the game around me. I could play good defense, force a miss, do everything right, and still feel like I lost. That wears on you. It forces you to rethink effort. It forces you to question whether control is even possible against someone who thrives in chaos. I remember looking up at the scoreboard after stretches where it felt like we defended well only to realize the margin hadn't moved. That's because Moses had already taken it back. There were possessions where I had to decide whether to stay home or chase him. If I stepped out to contest, he slipped inside. If I stayed back, he attacked the glass anyway. That puts you in constant decision-making mode. Do I protect space or do I hunt the ball? Do I preserve energy or do I spend it fighting for a rebound that might not be there? Those are the kinds of questions that pull you out of instinct. And once instinct is gone, the game feels heavier. Moses' strength was not just physical. It was psychological. He played as if he believed the game owed him nothing, and that belief carried over possession after possession. He didn't adjust to you. He made you adjust to him. That's rare. I faced great scorers, great defenders, great competitors. Moses attacked something different. He attacked rhythm. He attacked rest. He attacked the idea that one good defensive possession was enough. The truth is, Moses Malone didn't challenge my skill. He challenged my sense of control. He made the game feel endless, like it would only stop when he decided it should. And when you face a player who refuses to let the game settle, you learn quickly how tough he really is. That's why he's number 3 on this list. Number 2, Bill Walton challenged me in a way that felt almost personal, not because of trash talk or physical play, but because he understood the game from the same place I did. Off the court, there was mutual respect. We thought we cared about things beyond basketball. On the court, that shared understanding made things harder, not easier. When you face someone who sees the game the way you do, there's nowhere to hide. He knew what I wanted to do before I did it, and that kind of awareness creates pressure that never turns off. The matchup that defines it for me is the 1977 playoffs. Portland wasn't supposed to control that series the way they did, but Walton made it happen. He wasn't guarding me one-on-one the entire time. He was guarding the game. Every possession felt organized around his presence. I remember stretches where I would catch the ball, look to attack, and realize the help was already there. Passing lanes closed early. Rotations were sharp. I finished games with strong numbers, but again, that's not the point. The point was that I never felt ahead of the play. I was always reacting. Walton's greatest strength was anticipation. He didn't need to block shots to affect them. He didn't need to muscle you off your spot. He positioned himself so that the right play became the difficult one. When I went to the hook, he didn't overcommit. He trusted angles, he trusted timing, and when I chose to pass, he was already moving to take something else away. That's exhausting mentally because it forces you to play perfect basketball. Anything rushed or lazy gets punished immediately. There were moments in that series where I had to ask myself questions I rarely had to ask before. Do I score here, or do I keep the ball moving and trust that it comes back? Do I force my advantage, or do I respect the system he's anchoring? Those aren't easy questions in playoff basketball, especially when the other center is dictating tempo without ever needing the ball. Walton made me feel like I was playing against a mind, not just a body. What separated him from most defenders was that he didn't chase outcomes. He chased structure. He wanted the game played a certain way, and he bent it in that direction, possession after possession. That's dangerous for a player like me because my dominance came from imposing structure of my own. Against Walton, that dominance had to be negotiated. I couldn't simply take over. I had to coexist with his understanding of space, timing, and flow. The truth is, Bill Walton didn't make the game harder by taking something away directly. He made it harder by seeing everything. He turned basketball into a thinking contest, and he was always one step ahead. That's a rare kind of toughness. And that's why, when I look back, honestly, he stands just one spot away from the top. Number 1, Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem was different from everyone else on this list because he represented something I couldn't control anymore. Off the court, there was respect and distance. Different generations, different eras, different paths. On the court, the relationship was simple and unsettling. When I faced Hakeem late in my career, I wasn't just playing an opponent. I was standing across from the future of my position. That changes the way pressure feels. It's no longer about winning a matchup. It's about understanding what the game is becoming. I remember those matchups clearly, even though they came when my body was no longer what it used to be. That's part of why they stay with you. Hakeem wasn't overpowering me. He wasn't trying to outmuscle me in the post. He was moving, reading, anticipating. His footwork was lighter than any center I had ever seen. When I caught the ball, he was already balanced. When I turned, he was already there. When I went to the hook, he didn't chase it. He waited for it. That alone tells you everything. Very few players ever made my most trusted move feel uncertain. Hakeem did. There were possessions where I had to reset simply because the angle didn't feel right. Not because I was crowded, but because the space wasn't honest anymore. Hakeem took away clean lines. He slid instead of collided. He stayed connected without fouling. That forces you into thinking mode immediately. Do I release now, or do I hesitate? Do I go higher, or do I pull it back out? Those are small decisions, but when they add up, they change the entire rhythm of your game. What made Hakeem the toughest was that he could challenge me on both ends without ever looking strained. If I scored, he came right back with movement and touch that belonged to a guard. If I defended well, he adjusted within the same possession. He didn't repeat mistakes. He absorbed information quickly. That's rare. I had spent my career being the player others adjusted to. Against Hakeem, the adjustment cycle moved faster than I did. That's when you realize the balance of power has shifted. There were moments when I could feel the game pulling away from the style I had mastered. Centers were no longer just anchors. They were switchable, mobile, reactive. Hakeem embodied that completely. He wasn't just defending the present, he was executing the future. And standing across from that, you don't feel beaten, you feel replaced. That's a different kind of pressure. It doesn't hit your pride, it hits your awareness. The numbers from those games don't matter to me anymore. What matters is the feeling. The feeling that control was no longer absolute. That instinct had to give way to caution. That certainty had limits. Hakeem showed me that better than anyone else. He didn't just challenge my game, he challenged my era. The truth is simple, and there's no reason to dress it up. Hakeem Olajuwon was the first center who made me fully accept that the game had moved past me. And that's why he was the toughest rival I ever faced. When I look back at these 5 names, I don't see a ranking of greatness. I see 5 different kinds of pressure. Willis Reed taught me what it means to carry responsibility when everything around you feels heavy. Nate Thurmond showed me how discipline and physical presence can take away comfort without ever making noise. Moses Malone reminded me that control means nothing if the game refuses to slow down for you. Bill Walton forced me into a thinking contest where every possession became a question instead of an answer. And Hakeem Olajuwon showed me the future standing right in front of me, moving faster than the version of the game I had mastered. These weren't players who simply tried to stop me. They were players who changed the way the game felt when I was on the floor. They forced adjustments, they took instinct and replaced it with decision-making. That's the kind of toughness that lasts because it stays in your mind long after the buzzer sounds. Championships fade into history, records eventually get broken, but the rivals who made you uncomfortable, who made you question yourself in real time, those are the ones you remember clearly. If there's one truth I've learned, it's this. Greatness isn't defined by domination alone. It's defined by who had the power to challenge it. And these 5 men did that to me in ways I never forgot.